The massive holographic display flickered with the images of distant star systems, casting an eerie blue light across the Galactic Confederation's primary war room. Admiral Corvin leaned forward, his tentacle-like appendages tapping against the sleek command console with an air of supreme confidence. "Another human colony detected on the outer rim," announced a junior communications officer. The room filled with a mixture of dismissive chuckles and contemptuous murmurs. Captain Michael Roberts stood on the bridge of the Earth defense vessel Defiance, his weathered hands gripping the navigation console. The ship's sensors had been tracking the approaching alien fleet for hours. Unlike the relaxed atmosphere of the Galactic Confederation's command center, the human vessel hummed with quiet, intense preparation. The first transmission arrived with typical Confederation arrogance. A holographic figure materialized, a creature with multiple eyes and a translucent exoskeleton that seemed to shimmer with an internal light. Its voice was cold, calculated, and absolutely certain of victory. "Attention, human colony. This is Supreme Commander Vrel of the Galactic Confederation. Your territory has been designated for integrated expansion. You will surrender all planetary resources, technological databases, and submit to immediate colonial reassignment. Resistance is mathematically improbable." Michael Roberts didn't flinch. He had spent years preparing for this moment, studying alien communication protocols, analyzing invasion strategies, and understanding the psychological warfare embedded in such messages. "This is Captain Michael Roberts of Earth Defense Force," he responded, his voice calm but carrying an underlying steel. "I suggest you reconsider your approach." The alien commander's multiple eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of pure confusion and mild amusement. "Your suggestion is irrelevant," Vrel responded. "Our computational models show a 99.7% probability of complete submission. Your technological capabilities are primitive. Your defensive systems are negligible. Surrender is the only logical outcome." What the alien didn't know was that humans excelled precisely where logic failed. Unpredictability was their greatest weapon. Michael glanced at his tactical officer, Sarah Thompson, who was already running complex defensive scenarios. Their ship might look small compared to the massive Confederation vessels, but every system had been modified, every potential weakness reinforced. The Confederation fleet approached, a massive armada that would have crushed any known civilization in mere hours. Hundreds of ships, each the size of small cities, moved with mathematical precision. Weapon systems charged, invasion protocols activated, victory seemingly guaranteed. But they didn't understand humans. "Prepare defensive formation," Michael commanded. "Activate quantum interference shields. Route emergency power to lateral defense grids." The Defiance began a complex series of maneuvers that would have seemed impossible to any standard navigation computer. It danced between incoming weapon signatures, using gravitational anomalies and unexpected trajectory shifts that defied traditional combat mathematics. Back in the Confederation war room, Admiral Corvin's confidence began to waver. The initial scans were not matching their predictive models. The human vessel was responding in ways their algorithms couldn't comprehend. "Impossible," muttered one advisor. "No species resists this efficiently during first contact." Michael's final transmission was simple and carried a warning that would echo through galactic history. "You were warned to understand us before you decided to fight us. This is your only opportunity to reconsider." The first volleys of weapons fire erupted, marking the beginning of a conflict that would reshape galactic power dynamics forever. What the Confederation saw as a simple territorial expansion, humans recognized as an existential challenge, and humans never backed down from a challenge. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, watching the opening moments of a war that would become legendary. A conflict wherein supposedly inferior species would demonstrate that potential cannot be measured by existing standards. The battle for humanity's place in the galaxy had begun. The first wave of Galactic Confederation ships descended upon the human colony with absolute certainty of victory. Their massive vessels blocked out the sunlight, casting enormous shadows across the terraformed landscape of New Horizon colony. Captain Michael Roberts watched from the Defiance's bridge as the alien invasion force approached. The colony's defensive systems, which looked deceptively simple from the outside, began to activate in a choreographed dance of technological precision. Automated defense platforms emerged from hidden underground complexes. They didn't look like the advanced weapon systems the Confederation expected. Instead, they appeared almost crude, a mix of repurposed mining equipment, modified satellite networks, and what seemed like randomly placed communication towers. Incoming primary assault wave, reported Tactical Officer Sarah Thompson. Her fingers danced across multiple holographic interfaces, coordinating the colony's defense with a calm that would have unnerved any alien observer. The first plasma torpedoes launched from the Confederation ships, each carrying enough destructive power to obliterate a medium-sized city. But these weren't ordinary targets. The human colonists had spent decades preparing for precisely this moment. Quantum interference shields rippled into existence, invisible barriers that bent energy weapons in impossible directions. The plasma torpedoes that should have vaporized entire city blocks suddenly curved, spinning wildly before dissipating harmlessly into the atmosphere. In the Confederation command ship, Supreme Commander Varel's multiple eyes expanded in shock. "Recalibrate targeting systems," he bellowed, his exoskeleton shifting color, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. But the humans were just getting started. Underground launch facilities, camouflaged to look like agricultural complexes, suddenly erupted with a barrage of missiles. These weren't simple explosive devices. Each was a complex weapon system that adapted mid-flight, changing trajectory, splitting into multiple smaller projectiles, and utilizing quantum entanglement to bypass traditional defensive measures. "They're using our own technological principles against us," muttered a Confederation tactical advisor, his voice a mixture of professional admiration and genuine fear. The colony itself seemed to come alive. What appeared to be simple agricultural domes transformed into massive defensive platforms. Electromagnetic pulse generators emerged from what moments ago looked like simple greenhouse structures. Communication towers became sophisticated jamming systems that disrupted alien weapon targeting. Michael Roberts allowed himself a slight smile. Humanity's greatest strength had always been adaptation. The Confederation fleet began to lose ships at an alarming rate, not through direct destruction, but through systematic disruption. Weapon systems failed, navigation computers went offline, and communication networks collapsed under the human counterattack. "This is impossible," Supreme Commander Varel repeated, his voice losing its earlier confidence. The computational models, the centuries of galactic conquest, the absolute certainty of victory, all crumbled in the face of human unpredictability. Ground units attempting to land found themselves facing equally unexpected resistance. Colonists who moments ago appeared to be simple farmers transformed into a highly coordinated defensive force. Farming equipment became makeshift weapons. Agricultural vehicles turned into mobile defensive platforms. Sarah Thompson's voice cut through the chaos. Multiple enemy ships experiencing total systems failure. "They're losing cohesion." The battle wasn't just a military engagement. It was a psychological warfare masterpiece. The humans weren't just defending. They were sending a message to the entire Galactic Confederation. "We are not your prey. We are not your conquest." As the first wave of invasion collapsed, Michael Roberts knew this was just the beginning. The Confederation would return, probably with even more force. But they would never again underestimate humanity. "Damage report," he commanded. "Minimal colony damage," Sarah responded. "Defensive systems operating at 92% efficiency." The stars outside seemed to watch silently, bearing witness to the moment when humanity announced its arrival on the galactic stage. Not as a civilization to be conquered, but as a force to be reckoned with. The first battle was over. The war had just begun. The aftermath of the first battle revealed something the Galactic Confederation never anticipated. While other civilizations would have spent months analyzing their defeat, Humans had already begun transforming their initial defensive strategies into advanced offensive capabilities. In a nondescript research facility hidden beneath New Horizon Colony, a team of engineers worked with surgical precision. Scattered across massive workstations were components from destroyed Confederation ships, each piece carefully dissected, analyzed, and prepared for reverse engineering. Dr. James Miller, the lead research coordinator, held up a complex alien communication module. His team had already partially decoded its quantum encryption within hours of recovering the device. "This is fascinating," he muttered, tracing intricate circuit patterns that seemed to defy traditional electromagnetic principles. Nearby, computer specialists worked on interfacing alien technology with human systems. What seemed impossible to other civilizations was merely an interesting challenge for human innovators. They didn't just want to understand the alien technology, they'd wanted to improve it. Captain Michael Roberts received the initial reports. The research team wasn't just studying the alien tech, they were weaponizing it. Hybrid systems were already being designed, combining the best of human innovation with captured alien technology. "We're turning their own weapons into our greatest advantage," Sarah Thompson explained during the briefing. She projected holographic schematics showing how human engineers were modifying alien weapon signatures, creating entirely new classes of technological capabilities. The Confederation's communication networks, once considered unhackable, began experiencing systematic disruptions. Human cybersecurity teams had not just penetrated their systems, they were now actively manipulating them. Intelligence reports suggested total panic within the Confederation's leadership. Their supposedly invincible technological superiority was being dismantled piece by a civilization they had considered primitive. In orbital research stations, teams worked around the clock. Mining equipment was being retrofitted with alien propulsion systems. Communication satellites were being upgraded with quantum entanglement technologies stolen directly from Confederation ships. What made human adaptation truly terrifying was their speed. While other civilizations would take decades to integrate new technologies, humans were making breakthrough modifications within weeks. A captured Confederation engineer, one of the few survivors from the first battle, watched in horrified fascination as human researchers effortlessly reconfigured complex quantum systems. His own species would have required generations to achieve similar results. Michael Roberts understood the psychological warfare aspect of their technological transformation. Every modified system, every hacked network was another message to the Confederation. "We are not just survivors. We are architects of our own destiny." The hybrid weapon systems developed in those first critical weeks would become legendary. Missiles that could change trajectory mid-flight, defensive shields that could absorb and redirect energy instead of simply blocking it, communication systems that could simultaneously jam and infiltrate enemy networks. "We're creating weapons that don't just defend," Dr. Miller explained during a classified briefing, "but weapons that learn and adapt in real time." The first counteroffensive was being prepared. Not just a defensive action, but a strategic strike designed to demonstrate humanity's newfound technological capabilities. Communication intercepts showed growing fear within the Confederation. Their mathematical models of conquest, carefully developed over millennia, were falling apart. Humanity represented something they had never encountered. A species that didn't just adapt, but transformed entire technological paradigms. As repair and modification work continued, a sense of anticipation grew. The humans weren't just preparing for another battle. They were rewriting the rules of galactic warfare. The hybrid weapon systems gleamed under laboratory lights, silent, deadly, and ready to demonstrate that humanity's true strength wasn't in their current technology, but in their unlimited potential to evolve. The Confederation had started this war. Humanity was about to finish it. The battleground had shifted. What was once a simple territorial conflict had transformed into a showcase of human potential that defied every known galactic biological standard. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the Advanced Human Enhancement Laboratory, reviewing the latest genetic modification data. The soldiers being prepared weren't just trained warriors. They were living weapons that challenged every understanding of biological limitation. The first batch of enhanced soldiers looked deceptively ordinary. Medium height, average build, nothing that would immediately suggest the extraordinary capabilities hidden beneath their skin. But every system of their body had been optimized beyond natural human limits. Cybernetic neural interfaces allowed split-second tactical processing. Genetic modifications enhanced muscle density, oxygen absorption, and cellular regeneration. Nanomedical systems could repair critical injuries within minutes that would take other species weeks to heal. During initial combat simulations, these enhanced soldiers demonstrated capabilities that left Confederation observers in complete shock. They could operate in extreme environments, temperatures that would kill most biological entities, atmospheric conditions considered lethal, gravity variations that would crush ordinary organisms. A typical enhanced soldier could survive underwater for hours, function in near-zero oxygen environments, and withstand radiation levels that would vaporize most known species. Their pain tolerance was exponentially higher. Their cognitive processing speed approached quantum computing levels. Captain Michael Roberts watched the training exercises with a mixture of professional pride and strategic calculation. These weren't just soldiers. They were the next evolution of human potential. The first large-scale ground engagement would prove just how dramatically these enhancements changed warfare. When Confederation ground troops landed on the contested mining colony of Epsilon 9, they expected another quick conquest. Instead, they encountered something entirely unexpected. Human soldiers moved like liquid metal, adapting to terrain with impossible fluidity. Their weapons seemed to be extensions of their own bodies, not mechanical tools, but living instruments of precise destruction. Each movement was a calculated dance of efficiency and lethality. Communication intercepts revealed growing terror within Confederation ranks. Their battle reports became increasingly desperate and confused. How could a species they considered technologically inferior demonstrate such advanced combat capabilities? Enhanced soldiers could communicate through encrypted neural networks, share tactical information instantaneously, and coordinate with a precision that seemed almost telepathic. A single human unit could operate with the strategic complexity of an entire alien battalion. Genetic modifications weren't just about physical enhancement. Cognitive capabilities had been dramatically expanded. These soldiers could process complex tactical scenarios in milliseconds, predict enemy movements with uncanny accuracy, and adapt strategies in real time. Dr. Rodriguez's team had effectively created warriors who were part biological entity, part advanced computing system. They weren't just fighting. They were constantly analyzing, learning, and evolving during combat. The Confederation's initial invasion strategy collapsed within hours. Their most advanced troops found themselves outmaneuvered by humans who seemed to anticipate their every move. They're not just fighting. One captured Confederation commander reported during interrogation, "They're playing a game we don't even understand the rules of." Michael Roberts understood the psychological impact of these enhancements. It wasn't just about physical superiority. It was about demonstrating that humanity's potential was limitless, that they could transform themselves to meet any challenge. As news of these enhanced soldiers spread across galactic communication networks, other potentially neutral civilizations began to reconsider their stance. The humans weren't just another species to be conquered. They were a force of nature that could reshape entire biological understanding. The war had transformed from a simple territorial conflict to a demonstration of human potential, and humanity was just getting started. The Galactic Confederation's communication networks began to fracture under the weight of mounting psychological pressure. What had started as a confident invasion had devolved into a spiraling nightmare of uncertainty and fear. Supreme Commander Vrel stood in the central command chamber, his exoskeleton shifting through rapid color changes, a clear sign of extreme psychological distress. Holographic displays showed a cascading series of strategic failures that defied all computational predictions. "This is impossible," he muttered, a phrase that had become his increasingly desperate mantra. Intelligence reports from multiple fronts painted a terrifying picture. Human diplomatic teams were systematically dismantling the Confederation's political alliances. Where other species would have collapsed under such an invasion, humans were actively turning potential allies against the attacking force. On the diplomatic front, human representatives demonstrated a level of psychological manipulation that was truly unprecedented. They didn't just present facts. They crafted narratives that exposed the Confederation's long-standing vulnerabilities. Smaller civilizations that had been subjugated by the Confederation for centuries began to see humans as potential liberators rather than just another conquering force. Each diplomatic interaction became a strategic masterpiece of psychological warfare. The humans weren't just fighting a military battle. They were fighting an information war that cut to the core of the Confederation's galactic reputation. Communication intercepts revealed growing panic among Confederation leadership. Their most fundamental assumptions about warfare, technological superiority, and species hierarchy were being systematically dismantled. Captain Michael Roberts understood the power of psychological warfare. Every action, every communication was carefully designed to maximize psychological impact. The goal wasn't just to defeat the enemy, it was to make them question their entire existence. Confederation military units began experiencing unprecedented levels of morale collapse. Soldiers who had been part of countless conquests now found themselves facing an enemy that didn't follow any known rules of engagement. The hybrid human soldiers weren't just physically superior. They demonstrated a level of psychological resilience that seemed almost incomprehensible. Capture scenarios that would have broken other species became opportunities for further intelligence gathering. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's research team had essentially created warriors who were as psychologically enhanced as they were physically modified. They could withstand interrogation techniques that would drive most beings to complete mental breakdown. Strategic analysis centers across Confederation space began producing increasingly erratic reports. Their predictive models, which had worked for millennia, were now producing results that made no logical sense. They're not just fighting. One senior strategist reported, they're fundamentally challenging our understanding of what a species can be. The psychological warfare reached its critical point when human communication networks began broadcasting carefully crafted messages. These weren't simple propaganda. They were precisely engineered psychological triggers designed to exploit the deepest fears of the Confederation's various member species. Images of past Confederation conquests were recontextualized. Historical narratives were dismantled. Every communication became a surgical strike against the alien alliance's collective psyche. Smaller member species within the Confederation began to question their allegiance. The humans had exposed the fundamental lie of the alliance, that it was a cooperative enterprise rather than a system of oppression. Michael Roberts watched the unfolding psychological breakdown with calculated precision. This was warfare at its most sophisticated level, a conflict won not through pure military might, but through the complete dismantling of an enemy's collective will. The Confederation was no longer just losing a war. They were watching their entire galactic paradigm collapse. As communication networks continued to fragment, one thing became terrifyingly clear. Humanity was not just another species to be conquered. They were a fundamental challenge to everything the Confederation believed about power, evolution, and survival. The psychological war had reached its tipping point, and humanity was just getting started. The human counteroffensive began like a perfectly choreographed symphony of destruction. Captain Michael Roberts stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as entire Confederation strategic sectors prepared to be dismantled. This wasn't just a military operation. This was a complete systematic deconstruction of an galactic power structure that had existed for millennia. Human fleet formations moved with a precision that defied traditional warfare strategies. Each ship was no longer just a weapon platform, but a living, adaptive combat system. They changed formations faster than Confederation computers could calculate defensive responses. The first major strike targeted the Confederation's primary logistical hub, a massive space station that had been the central nervous system of their military supply chains. What should have been an impenetrable fortress became a monument to human tactical innovation. Quantum-encrypted infiltration teams moved through the station's systems like digital ghosts. Defense mechanisms that had repelled countless invasions simply stopped functioning. Not destroyed, not hacked, simply neutralized with surgical precision. "Target acquired," reported Sarah Thompson, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces, initiating primary disruption protocols. The attack wasn't about destruction. It was about sending a message. Every strategic location the humans targeted was chosen with psychological calculation. They weren't just destroying infrastructure. They were dismantling the Confederation's sense of invulnerability. Smaller allied species, who had been subjugated for generations, watched in stunned silence. The seemingly invincible Confederation was being systematically taken apart by a species they had considered primitive. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's enhanced soldier units operated with a level of coordination that seemed almost supernatural. They weren't just fighting. They were performing a complex tactical ballet that redefined the very concept of ground warfare. Communication networks across Confederation space began to collapse, not through brute force, but through sophisticated infiltration that systematically removed their ability to coordinate. Supreme Commander Farrell watched in horror as sector after sector fell. Their most advanced defensive systems became nothing more than elaborate decorations against human technological adaptation. The humans had studied the Confederation's warfare protocols for decades. Every defensive strategy, every tactical response had been meticulously analyzed and prepared for. What the aliens saw as impenetrable defense, humans saw as an intricate puzzle waiting to be solved. Diplomatic channels that had once been channels of alien superiority now became conduits of human strategic communication. Other species began to realize that alliance with the Confederation was no longer a path to safety. It was a guaranteed path to destruction. Michael Roberts understood that this wasn't just a war. This was a fundamental reshaping of galactic power dynamics. Enhanced human ships moved through space with a fluidity that challenged existing understanding of propulsion. Weapon systems adapted in milliseconds, changing frequency, trajectory, and energy signature faster than any tracking system could comprehend. The psychological impact was devastating. Confederation military units weren't just being defeated. They were being systematically demonstrated as obsolete. Each human strike was a surgical message. We are not just survivors. We are the architects of a new galactic order. Logistical networks collapsed. Communication systems became unreliable. The once mighty Confederation found itself reduced to isolated, panicking units unable to coordinate a unified response. "Complete strategic breakdown in Sector 9, reported a tactical officer. "Enemy command structures are fragmenting." This was total war fought with a level of sophistication that transcended traditional military understanding. The humans weren't just winning. They were rewriting the very rules of conflict. As the offensive continued, one thing became terrifyingly clear. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were here to stay. The war was entering its final phase, and the Confederation was about to learn the true meaning of human potential. The final negotiations took place on a neutral space station, suspended in the calm emptiness between contested territories. Captain Michael Roberts led the human delegation, a group that looked more like diplomatic professionals than conquering warriors. Supreme Commander Farrell arrived broken, his once proud exoskeleton now a dull, faded membrane that reflected his civilization's comprehensive defeat. The Galactic Confederation's centuries of galactic dominance had been dismantled in mere months. "Humanity's terms are non-negotiable," Michael stated coldly, his voice carrying the weight of a species that had just rewritten galactic power dynamics. The peace treaty wasn't just a document. It was a complete reconstruction of interstellar relationships. Confederation member species would be granted unprecedented autonomy. Centuries of oppressive control would be systematically dismantled. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat nearby, representing the scientific and technological achievements that had made this victory possible. Her presence alone was a statement. Humans were not just warriors, but innovators who could reshape entire civilizations. The terms were surprisingly measured. Humanity didn't seek total destruction. They sought a fundamental restructuring of galactic interactions. Compensation would be paid, not in traditional resources, but in technological exchanges. The Confederation would share centuries of accumulated scientific knowledge. Humanity would integrate this information, inevitably improving upon it. Diplomatic channels were to be completely restructured. No longer would might make right. A new cooperative framework would be established, with multiple species having genuine representation. Sarah Thompson managed the technical details of the treaty, her expertise in communication systems ensuring that every clause was precisely crafted to prevent future conflicts. The psychological impact was profound. Smaller species who had been subjugated for generations watched in awe. Humanity had not just defeated the Confederation, they had offered a path to genuine cooperation. "We warned you to run," Michael reminded the defeated delegation. "You chose not to listen." Those words would be recorded in galactic historical archives, a simple statement that encapsulated the entire conflict. The human enhancement programs that had been developed during the war would be partially shared, not as a weapon, but as a potential medical breakthrough that could benefit multiple species. Confederation leadership was systematically restructured. Those who had pursued aggressive expansion would be removed, replaced by representatives committed to genuine interstellar cooperation. Research facilities would be established in neutral zones, allowing multiple species to collaborate. Humanity's approach wasn't about domination, but about collective advancement. The treaty signing was broadcast across multiple communication networks. Billions of beings watched as a new chapter in galactic history was written. What had started as an invasion had transformed into a fundamental reimagining of interstellar relationships. Humanity had not just fought a war. They had demonstrated a new model of civilization. As the final documents were signed, Michael Roberts looked out at the vast emptiness of space. This wasn't an end. This was a beginning. The Confederation had come looking for conquest. They found something they never expected, a species that would change everything. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were here to stay. The stars themselves seemed to watch, bearing silent witness to a moment that would be remembered for generations. We warned them to run. They didn't listen. And now, everything would be different.